Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. So this video is going to be about Google Earth Pro. For those of you who don't know, Google Earth is basically a virtual globe, which basically lets you look at the Earth as a sphere constructed through some composite images from satellites. And the Google Earth Pro is a very similar version of this. The Google Earth Pro is only downloadable, and it's got some more bells and whistles basically. So that's why I'm using Google Earth Pro right now. So for starters, we'll navigate around the globe. So if you click and hold on at any point on the Earth, you can drag it around like so. If you click in space, you can rotate around like this. And now if you want right click on a particular area, like for example, you'll see this little crosshairs. If you move the mouse button away from you while you're holding right click, it'll zoom out. But if you're doing the opposite method, moving it towards you, then it will zoom in. Now you can also move the map around with arrow keys. Like for example, I'm pressing left arrow right now, right arrow, up arrow, down arrow. And you can also, likewise with the right click, you can see I'm zooming in right here and zooming out. You can establish the same effect by zooming in and then zooming out. So rolling the mouse bar, or button 3, I forgot what's that, the scroll wheel. So moving it towards you will zoom out, moving it away will zoom in, sort of inverse with a right click function, but nevertheless it's fine. And then you can, if you press down on the scroll wheel, it allows you to change the angle of viewing. So for example, I have it placed right directly ahead of the crosshairs. Now if I move it up, it's not going to go anywhere, but if I move it down, like so, it gives you a new angle. You can drag it around left, right, center, however you want it, and just drag around this a virtual reference point. And now finally, the final tool, I'm sorry, no, not the final tool, the final tool you can use mostly with your mouse. Hang on, I gotta reset here. So yeah, the last thing you can do is you can hold control, and it will sort of like free up your camera to look anywhere around you. So it's like basically you're just stuck in some point in the air. If you hold control and left click, you can look at the terrain from various viewpoints. So that's for most of the keyboard and mouse functions. Now over to the right here, you see I just click north. That reorientates yourself north. This is a compass. It just shows north. And now you can see these arrows. You can see these rotate, which is basically very similar to what happened when you were kind of holding down control. Of course, using left or right will orient yourself north by northeast or northwest. Holding down will have the same effect again as control left click. Then below here we have a second button. We have a move around button. Basically, you can either click an arrow to just move ahead, or move around rather. If you click on this hand button here, you can see that you can actually pull it in the direction you want, and so it will move around. And finally, for our controls, we have a zoom button, which is basically the exact same thing as the scroll wheel and the right click mouse button. It will just zoom in right on your target reticle. Now down here below at the bottom, we have some useful information. We have the imagery date, which is basically the date at which it's most, for the most recent photos are from. You'll see the latitude and longitude of basically any sort of place you're hovering over. It'll show you the elevation in feet, and it will also show you the altitude at which you're viewing the Earth from. So that's basically how you get around in Google Earth. There are a couple things more I'll touch up. First off, Google Earth is very much a place-focused thing. That is, it focuses on place and revealing information around places. So basically, first off, we'll go over the search button. So you can use a search button. You can type in pretty much anywhere. So for example, I'm going to type in Boise, Idaho, and click search. And now it's going to fly over to Boise, Idaho. It's going to take a little bit of a while, but okay. So now we're over Boise. You can right-click Boise here. You can click Show Balloon, which is basically just this little pop-up that tells you a little bit about Boise or whatever it is you're looking at. You can also achieve the same thing by just clicking on it. And then, of course, the second option is to fly here, although we're already here. We just flew in, so for example, if I zoom out somewhere else, if I click Fly here, And it will zoom in on Boise. Okay, and it will take roughly the same time no matter how big the screen is. So for the third thing you do is to save to My Places. And so you can see here, once I click Save to My Places, I put it under My Places. Now if I double click here again, it will also fly in, although this will adjust the view a little bit, I guess because it was like that before. But yeah, so that's basically what you can do. You can save to My Places, copy as KML. So this is this one I'll talk about in the next part, but basically it just lets you just copy it as like a KML file, which is basically a keyhole markup language file. But we'll talk about that in some other videos now. Of course, so by default under Places you have My Places and Boise, which is under that. And then you have temporary places, which you can just kind of create some temporary places. You can actually drag and drop here. And so you can see now Boise is under my temporary places. And basically, as I mentioned before, Google Earth Pro is very much a place-focused, place-heavy sort of software. But basically, just lets you create places, and we'll get to more of that. We'll get to this more in the next video. But basically, you can save places here, and then finally there's layers. Actually, no. So you can actually search for places here. So of course you see I have Boise typed in. But let's say I want to find another place. Let's say I want to go to, I don't know, Bismarck, North Dakota. Okay, we're here. Now we're going to save to My Places and put it under temporary places just because it's consistent. And then if I click Bismarck, it will highlight. So if I click on Boise instead, it too will highlight instead of Bismarck. So you can use the search button to figure that out. Finally, for our last video on this part, we have layers. So layers are basically, I guess, kind of what they sound like. They're just layers of information on top of the map. You can see that there's a primary database here. There are some announcements. Again, it's not really important. Sometimes places will come with announcements. Borders and labels. That's pretty much exactly what it sounds like, or what it reads like. So let me just zoom in here. Wait for some borders to show up. Okay, this is taking a little bit longer than I thought. Basically, yeah, so I guess I'll just leave it for now. I mean, it's nothing really loading. It's just borders and labels, it's just standard states and provinces and countries. Basically, not that much. Not really that much to it. Because you can see a little bit of the border here, but places, again, they're just sort of more like places of interest almost. Photos, again, you can just geotag photos anywhere on the map. Roads, again, if you double click this, then it will show up some various roads. Like, for example, you can see the I-84 going straight through, well, not exactly at Boise, but going straight through this little metropolitan area. So I'll unclick that. 3D buildings, it's exactly what it sounds like. So if we zoom in, I think Boise has some 3D buildings, but basically, yeah, so you can see the buildings are more or less 3D, and some of them are kind of small, some of them are kind of flat, but you can see in general that there are 3D. And let's zoom back, zoom out. The weather, weather is sort of weather. It's not exactly that useful. Although there are some uses to it, so we'll just turn off the weather. Gallery, it's just, again, just images. If we click on that, you can show different galleries. For example, we have this Orchard Gulch, which is contributed by Mr. I'm not going to say his name, but don't know his name. And finally, we have terrain. Now, terrain is very important for identifying altitude of certain paths or lines or polygons, etc. So that's pretty important. But otherwise, I think if you turn off terrain, basically everything just becomes really flat. So you need terrain if you want to see things in 3D. So yeah, that's basically the gist of Google Earth. Next video, we'll be talking about how you can use some sort of KMZ files, KML files, what sorts of things you can do with Google Earth Pro that can make maybe of somewhat use. they basically can be useful in just, various aspects. So hope you like this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.